Welcome to Performance Driven Living, the podcast where we question everything. We don't tiptoe around tough topics, we walk right into them. Not to provoke, but to get closer to what's real. You might not agree with everything you hear, and that's okay. The show isn't about being right, it's about being real. These conversations are meant to stretch your thinking, challenge assumptions, and spark something deeper. The views shared are those of our guests and may not reflect those of the host or team. And while we dive deep into health, performance, and transformation, this is not medical advice. Talk to your doctor before making changes to your health or lifestyle. Take what lands, leave what doesn't. But whatever you do, don't stop questioning.
We are here with an episode that I've been looking forward to here on Performance Driven Living, because this guy put a social media post out there, and it's like there's a lot of people that we talk to on social media, that we follow on social media, and I'm going to say we follow them and we never really know them. We don't get to know them. We're not personal with them, but it's like we follow people and we think we know them because of how much stuff that we absorb on there. And one day I just out of nowhere sent this guy an inbox message and was like, hey, just wanted to say hi. I don't know why I don't know you. We move in a lot of similar circles and know all the same people. Why don't I know you? And it started a conversation that I love. And Dr. Austin Lake, I'm excited to have you here joining us today, because many people wouldn't realize this, but this is the first time we've actually talked is on this podcast, other than Instagram messages back and forth. So I appreciate and I'm honored to have you here. I tell you, I start every program and I read this because our production team puts together these bios on you that I'm supposed to introduce you with.
Sure.
And nothing I can say would ever actually match the eloquence that they put together here. So I intentionally read them every time. And it says, today's guest is flipping the script on what it means to actually live an active, healthy life, especially for women navigating midlife. Dr. Austin Lake is a doctor of physical therapy, a functional medicine practitioner, and the creator of the Active Life program. He's helped hundreds of women between the ages of 35 and 65 ditch the Band-Aid solutions, reclaim their energy, and start living pain-free without relying on medication. His approach blends movement science, functional medicine, and real-world practicality, and it's not about hacks, it's about actual healing. Dr. Lake, welcome to the show.
Wow, yeah, that I couldn't have said it better myself. Your team is awesome.
That's why I just read it.
Yeah, that's great.
I just gave up pretending. I just read it at this point. I'm like, I think this is great. I'll just go ahead and read this and see what's happening.
Go with it. Yeah, I appreciate that intro, and I think part of the reason we haven't run across each other is that I haven't been doing the social media thing very long, and I think my exposure and reach has just continued to increase, year over year, but mostly the last year has been the biggest exponential growth. And, there's people say there's different reasons for it in terms of strategy and social media marketing, whatever you want to call it. But I really do bring it back to the fact that, about 2 years ago, I was just really, actually more about 2.5, I was just doing some soul searching about all things that had happened during COVID. And I had a brick and mortar practice at that time where, I was doing a functional medicine practice and seeing people in person and all that stuff. And I went through all the COVID mess and never, I was in Colorado, don't tell anyone, but never shut down, never closed my doors, kind of just kept things going because, they were pressuring a lot of people to shut down and to not see people. And I was just like, look, if anyone needs to be seen, it's now. People need real interaction. They need real help. And, I'm not going to close my doors. And by the grace of God, I never had any issues with that. And I'm still kind of amazed by that because I was in Colorado. But through all that, just felt like I had seen enough of what we were doing working so well with people that I just felt this huge conviction to talk about it, right? And talk about it in bigger platforms and bigger spaces. And, social media was the first thing that obviously came to my mind. But, I just asked God, I was like, God, I feel like this is a conviction you laid on my heart. And, I always told people, somebody needs to do something, somebody needs to say something and do something. This is just madness. And the conviction I kept getting was just well, you do something, you say something, you know enough about this stuff to make an impact. So just do it, and I felt that conviction. But my prayer was okay, God, if I'm going to do this, I want you to open the floodgates and bring people to me that need to hear this. And, you know, it was literally that, like, I'm not even joking you. That night I prayed that. I had a post go viral, and it was like on vitamin D3 and K2 and all this different stuff. And it was just kind of an eye-opening experience of like, wow, like people don't know this stuff and people are hungry for it. And I guess the rest you could say is history. But yeah, that's kind of, I think, why we haven't run into each other, is that my, you know, online presence has just really increased a lot the last year. And, you know, it's been fun. But
for increasing a lot and just recently hitting 1 million Instagram followers, I would say that that's a pretty big increase.
Yeah, I mean, so a year ago, well, I guess it was a year, January, I was like under 200,000, right? So I wasn't, you know, nearly where I was now, where I am now. But part of what sparked that was, again, I had a post where, you know, I explained how I lost a client that, you know, was a current client that didn't like me sharing my faith online. Like, she didn't know that I was really an active Christian. Like, she knew I was like religious or whatever is what she thought, but I was saying some things that were just too radical for her, and she wanted, you know, her money back and all this stuff. And I just shared that. I just shared like that experience. And that was kind of another big push for me. But I guess the whole point of all this is just that for me, it's been just kind of eye-opening to see how people are hungry for the truth, and they're hungry for authenticity, right? Like, they're hungry for people who have...
Took the word out of my mouth.
Yeah, like they were sick and tired of just like this mass media, like just blanket statements, and this is what you should believe, and ramming it down our throats all the time. And people just want to have good conversations and talk to real people that are authentic about what they believe. And that's all I've ever tried to do. And the cool thing is, you know, we've helped, you know, a few thousand women change their lives. And like, it's real stuff. It's not like the social media stuff for me is, I just share what I've learned and what I've done. I've never considered myself to be like an influencer until I hit 1 million followers. Like, I guess I can call myself that now, but up until that point, it was always just like, this is what I've seen work, and this is what this is what we're doing with real people, and just trying to share those testimonies and stuff like that. So,
yeah, anyway. and I mean, you literally took the word out of my mouth, because I was waiting for you to complete your thought, and I was going to tell you my prediction on why your social media has climbed the rate that it has is authenticity. And I think we are bombarded with messages and content all day long, and I'm going to say this, and it's the reason I'd reached out to you months ago or whatever, and it literally was a matter of, there's no shortage of social media people out there trying to give advice. The problem is for the majority of them, I don't believe they're trying to help me. I believe they're trying to use that message to build their audience so that they have greater influence. And it's people realize that, like, that authenticity is evident. Yeah. And if I think you're putting out stuff so that I follow you, or you're putting out content so that I'll give you your dopamine hit with your like in the comments, like, all of that stuff may be real, it may be true, but it's not authentic, and it's not for my benefit. And the content that you create, I'm going to say, is unapologetically authentic. And I mean that's genuinely. Like, and I don't say this from a place of trying to flatter you, because if I'd have thought I was just trying to flatter you, I wouldn't have reached out to begin with if I didn't think you were authentic about it. I mean, you and I probably know most of the same people in the influencer space when it comes to health and wellness. Yeah. And, you know, I can probably count on one hand how many of them I think are just 100% authentic people and not just trying to work to build their brand. And I think there's a lot of people out there. I'll tell you what, like, I was just texting a minute ago with Ben Azadi. I'm sure you know Ben Azadi. And, you know, one of the things I love about Ben is he's authentic. Yeah. Like, he tells the story about why and how he got into what he does. And I mean, you can practically hear him choke up crying on his audiobook talking about his dad. Like, and I'm like, that's just not stuff you create, right? And yet I know other people who 100%, who I'd say 100% are nothing but building audiences, right? And I think that's obvious. One of the things that, and I want to get into some of the stuff that you do as a functional medical practitioner, and I will say this, like, I work in the marketing space, mostly in the longevity space, but also have a PhD in functional medicine. So none of that's lost on me. Yeah. In fact, I do it just for personal enrichment and interest. So, you know, you practice and actually talk to people. I just get a lineup of friends and family who ask me questions all day long. Yeah, that's great. Good stuff. You know how that works. Yeah. Well, I've got actually a fake sister of mine actually has breast cancer right now, and we just got into this conversation because, you know, she called. She's like, "What do you think?" And I'm like, give you everything I believe, and I can give you all of this. And I'm like, but I also want to make sure that what I'm giving you is very digestible for you. I'm like, let's start with the basics, like ketogenic diet. Let's get into some fasting protocols. And I'm like, if anything, like I want you to do a 72-hour fast. And I'm like, but let me tell you, I'm like, here's what I want. Tell me when you start. I will do it with you.
Right. That's
like,
awesome.
This is going to be a solidarity fast. If you're going to do 72 hours on a fast, I'm going to do it with you, because that way you're not feeling like you're having to go through something. Like, nope, I'm in it with you. Like, let's do it.
That's cool.
It's that kind of stuff, right? It's giving people good health advice. And then I introduced her to Naisha Winters. I'm like, I want you to talk to Naisha. Like, this would be a good introduction for you. I told her, if you lean in, I sent her a copy of Metabolic Freedom with Benazati. I'm like, go do this. Like, here's a list of people I want you to start following. Like, learn that this is not me telling you this.
Right.
Because I don't want it to be me telling you. I want you to learn from multiple different sources and hear opposing opinions on some of this stuff too, right?
Yeah.
But one of the things that stands out about you, and I've often made this observation about this longevity space, and I recently, I'm going to sell out on something here. I probably shouldn't, but that's all right. I'll try to get him on the podcast too, and then it's going to be evident. Okay. Do you know who Timothy Alberino is?
I don't think I do.
Okay, so he held a conference. I call it Conspiracy Camp.
Okay.
But he's an incredible Christian man, but he really goes into a lot of deep history of ancient origins and stuff like that. So, and I attended the conference. I'm like, I really love his stuff.
Yeah.
Super, super biblical based. It is, but really cool stuff. But anyways, when I went there, a lot of the conversation there was about this topic of AI. It was about, what does that mean in biblical senses, and how does that play into end times and all this other kind of stuff. And I'm like, all right, like I filter a lot of the stuff and I know what I do and believe. And, but then he starts talking about biohacking. And I was like, okay, where's this going to go? Because my belief has been that in the biohacking longevity community, I believe that I want to make sure that I make a difference between spirituality and evangelical religious belief.
Absolutely.
Because I think too many yoga instructors are super spiritual, but that's not what I'm talking about.
Yeah, very different.
But I believe this idea of spirituality has either gotten way too woo and people shut it down because it's too weird, or the biohacking community has gone so scientific that they have ruled out anything about spirituality and religion that could possibly have anything. And the conversation I was really looking forward to having with you today is that what's impressed me with you and what you do and the way you speak authentically has been you're unapologetically a Christian, and I share that faith, but you do so in such a functional way. Like, you're approaching functional medicine and unapologetically Christian at the same time. And when I listened to the folks at Conspiracy Camp talk about AI and all this stuff, like it was as if biohackers themselves were absolute jokes, because how dare you believe you're going to live forever and so on. And it was very, very pejorative. And they literally started quoting from a bunch of, these influencers. In fact, this one just said this. And I'm like, should I text that person and let him know what you're saying about him right now? Like, you're dogging my friends. Like, this is not okay. Yeah. And at the same time, like, I go to the biohacking conferences and they're making a joke out of Christianity a lot of times because, everything is found in the world of science. You balance that beautifully.
Well, thank you.
And I'm curious if you find yourself, I recently saw you doing a podcast, and I want to say was it with Brecca that you did that?
Possibly. Yeah.
But it was a podcast, and it was funny to me because you were having a conversation with a person who I don't normally associate with being a Christian or
it's probably Brecca
person.
Yeah.
And I think it was Brecca actually. And you were just flat out you. And I'm like, it's so authentic, but can you speak to what that balance feels like? Because I think there is a tug of war between those groups. Yeah. And I think you, and I will say me as well, like, I'm perfectly comfortable standing in the middle of those conversations. Like, you're not, like, I've got degrees in functional medicine and also degrees in clinical psychology, but I also have a master's degree in theology.
Yeah.
Like,
cool.
I'll gladly stand in the middle of those worlds, right?
Yeah, that's awesome.
What do you see? Because I think that's the authenticity that comes across.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it's kind of an easy answer in a way. I think my first, I use this word intentionally, but my first fear is the opinion of my Father in heaven. Like that to me is such a significant deal when you really believe who God is and who He is in our life and what He created us for. That like is such a strong conviction that I that overpowers usually most of the time my opinion of what other people think of me. And so I think the reason I try to be balanced with that tension between those two worlds, like you described, is because I want to be effective in my my work and in my mission, in my calling that God's put on my life. And so I want to approach it with love and grace and all that with each person, and try to reach people that have never heard the gospel before, but also be firm for those who need to know, like, that it's a serious matter, and that that I believe it seriously, like that I take it very seriously. And so I want people, again, that gets back to authenticity. Like if people believe that I am being authentic with my statements and with what I'm saying, then I think it helps for them to then come to their own conclusion about maybe what I'm saying. So like they might take it more seriously. Like, well, he's been pretty convicted about these areas of health, and this seems to be true, and this seems to be well founded in research, and he has a strong conviction about it. He tries to live it with himself and with his family, and he also talks about his faith in a very similar way too. And so I think that helps to kind of bring people into the fold that don't know about the gospel, and then also for people who are Christians who know about the gospel but don't live in this like biohacking or any kind of like world besides conventional medical system health, bring them into this other area of health that's like, hey, maybe there's something here that I can learn too, and actually grow in and improve my life through my health. And so that's kind of how I guess I think about it. But I don't know. I think the Holy Spirit is very, He gives us wisdom abundantly, and if we ask for it, and the ability to discern. And I think the times that we slip up, it's because we're not leaning into that. Like we're leaning into our own flesh or our own human constructs, and sometimes like the only answer is just the Holy Spirit is wise and He gives us wisdom when we ask for it. So like there's probably a lot of that going on.
I think that's true. It's a couple directions I want to go with the conversations, but I want to layer them in here from the dovetail off of what you just said. There's something you've mentioned in there about people who are from the biohacking community, and I'll use the word longevity because the word biohacking annoys me.
Yeah. I do too. It's just
the wellness
longevity, it's health,
right?
The
Longevity community,
right?
People who are in that space, I think there is a necessity for them to hear the gospel message in an authentic way, and I believe you're right that when they hear it from a person with conviction who's living that life, it does legitimize it, and I think that's what it does when they're hearing it from a person who's clearly educated, from a person who's clearly in their space and speaking their language.
Right.
It legitimizes the fact that these things are not opposites. In fact, they can harmonize. But I'm curious, I'm going to set you up for failure here. I'm curious about, we can easily talk about the need for that science community to have faith. Except one of my biggest convictions as a believer has been that I think the church is embarrassing when it comes to wellness and health.
Yeah.
And I personally believe that the church ought to be the healthiest group of people on the planet, and they ought to be the wealthiest people on the planet, and they ought to be the people who are thriving and marriages are thriving and all this else. Right. And yet, I grew up in a Baptist church, and the spiritual love language was potluck, and I mean that's how you showed affection, was a casserole. And
right.
And it's like it's an obese group of people who are in terrible health and living on 15 different medications that the doctor gave, and half of them fighting the poverty of, I can't get off the couch, so I can't get a better job, and I'm going to go serve at church more hours rather than go to college, or that type of stuff. And I mean, I used to watch it in a church. I was a worship leader at my mega church up in Michigan before I moved down to Florida. And I used to watch it all the time. And it was like people who would be in this volunteerism burnout, and taking a bow. And in the meanwhile, I'm like, your financial life is a wreck.
Yeah.
Like you can't even pay your bills, but you're volunteering all these hours. And it's like, that's not God honoring.
Right.
But I feel that way about people in that community who aren't paying attention to their health either. And it's a very unhealthy group of people by and large.
Yeah.
Not as much so down here in South Florida because we're all vain and shallow people by
we got to be
nature.
outside in the sun all the time. You don't
Absolutely. Like no one wants to look bad in a swimsuit, but how do you balance that? Because I think it's easy for us to talk about the philanthropy of sharing the gospel with people in the science community, but sharing the science with the gospel community, I think isn't received well all the time, right? Like tell a Christian they're fat and that's not God honoring, and you probably just, caused all kinds of waves.
Yeah. No, yeah, I think, it's interesting. I've been trying to, I've had this, again, conviction that I want to kind of do this like church speaking circuit, where it's like the churches that will have me to go and I'm not a public speaker. I've never been I may be able to do it well. I don't know. I've just never done it before, but I want to lean into that a little bit because I feel like the church is in such desperate need of just somebody pushing the envelope a little bit and just posing some ideas that are a little bit counter Christian culture, like when it comes to health and wellness. And, I was asking some local churches that I have been a part of, and like they know me, and I don't think they fully know what I do, but they're both kind of like, well, like we have to maintain some level of democracy within the church, and we don't want to ascribe to a particular, idea when it comes to health. And I was just like, shaking my head, just like, what do you mean? Like there's like a way to be healthy, right? Like that's not a,
exactly.
Like that's not a democratic or, it kind of baffled me a little bit. And I think a lot of pastors are so, number one, I think they themselves are walking in a way that is maybe convicting. So like they don't want to talk about things that they are maybe doing, right? And so if you are overweight or you don't fully understand the stuff or you are on a bunch of pills or whatever, it may feel like hypocritical for you to talk about it as a leader of your congregation. I don't know. Like that's just one thing that kind of comes to my mind. But I don't think that's a good reason for us to do. I think if anything, that's a reason we need to talk about it. Is we need to help the body, 100%. the Christ body, to be healthier, and we need to kind of be open to discussing things that we don't know and grow in our understanding. And I think the reason Christians default to it, at least from my observation, is I think we rely too much on the ecclesiastics mindset of like it's all meaningless, it's all vain under the sun. And I think it's unfortunate because that's a misrepresentation of like what life is. Like it's not that life is meaningless. It's just that there are meaningless things that we can do. But the example I like to give, and I gave it on Brecca, was, like if you woke up early in the morning and you're, I picture it in Cannon Beach because we were in Cannon Beach when I was kind of thinking about this, but you're building a sandcastle. You wake up really early in the morning and you're putting all this effort into building a sandcastle, and you're sculpting it. You're doing it with your child, or you're having a lot of fun, but there's also some hard times to like scoop the sand and build it out. But then at the end of the day, the tide comes in, it's going to wash it all away. Like that's like kind of what our life is in a way. Like we're putting all this effort into something and building something, but at the end of it, like it's all going to be wiped out. And that's okay, because it's not just about making that thing last forever. It's about being intentional and building something and working hard and honoring what God has given us. And I think life is kind of that way. Like, the actual, I think it's the Hebrew meaning of that word meaningless, at least from my understanding, the context of it is hevel. And that means it's more like a vapor. It's like more of something that can't be grasped. It's like more of like a fog, like you see it and you can't really grasp it. So like life is kind of that way. Like you see this something going in front of you, but you can't really put your hands around it. But it doesn't mean that it's not important, right? Like obviously life is important. And I think that's what Christians fail to do is, we don't want to make an idol with our health. Like we don't want to be vain and like make it all about health, but we also don't want to think it's meaningless and do nothing with it. Like there is this tension in between, I think we have to kind of be mindful of.
I had somebody say something to me before about you're never satisfied. You know, you always want more, you always want better, you always want whatever. And it's like, I want my health optimized. I want my
Yeah.
business to be better optimized. I want, you know, everything in my life that can be better. I want it to be better. And it was just like, well, isn't there, you know, go to Paul's teaching about, you know, I learned to be content in all things. Like, can't you be content? And I'm like, yes, like I'm not discontent just because I
Right.
want to optimize things in my life. And I said, in fact, if given the resources, for instance, my mind, like I'm a smart guy, I
Sure.
get that, and I'm not apologetic about that.
Right.
It's dishonoring not to use that gift to the gift giver.
Right.
Like if I've been given that gift and the gift goes to, if I've been given health, then it is dishonoring to the giver of my health
Right.
to not care for it.
Right. Well, especially when, you know, like we don't have to suffer nearly as much as we do. Like I think what I'm realizing is I think people only do enough just to keep their cup slightly full enough to just do the bare minimum, right? But like, what about if you have a cup that's full or overflowing? Well, you then give out of that cup to other people. Like that's the idea, right? And so as parents, if we're just existing and we're not able to pour that out back on our children, like our children are going to have a rough upbringing, right? Like they're not going to do nearly as well as they could. But if we like start filling up our cup, and then we have the ability to kind of keep replenishing it through good strategies, good habits, good all these things that help good health and all this stuff, like then you get to pour it out on other people. Like you gotta keep passing the blessing to other people. And I think that's what we kind of fail to think about. Like we only think about our current existence and our current like level of just the bare minimum. But like, what about beyond that? Like, there's so much more you can do with this once you meet your own needs. You know.
I'm going to have to send you a copy of my most recent book launch called Radical Generosity, and literally walk through, you know, the physiological benefits of being generous and how being generous changes us. And the more we're able to, you know, the more we give, the more we give.
Right.
Right. Like it's a self-perpetuating cycle that we create. And I believe that. And, you know, going through the physiology of everything from oxytocin release and so on and so forth, like it literally is an antidepressant. It is, you know, all of those things. I mean, there is this like, well, sure, I can live on drugs, or I can find ways to actually release serotonin and oxytocin and, you know, without having to do that, you know, artificially. And because even the artificial stuff starts to teach my body that it doesn't need to do it on its own. And then I become dependent because now I have no way of doing it. But I want to go, I love that, by the way. And the idea that, you know, I believed we would share that belief that the church ought to be a healthier group of people, because the idea that we do that, you know, that we take care of and we're good stewards of our health, the same way we're called to be good stewards of our finances. And I believe even when I think of like the parable of the talents, right? Like, I think that's 100% to anything we've been given. That's not a financial lesson. That is an everything lesson. You know, to the person who's been given much, much is expected. And if I've been given health, then I ought to be expected to care for that the same way I do anything else. And to your point, when I'm in better health, and that can be mental, spiritual, psychological, physiological, biological, whatever definition of health we want to use, I'm in a position to be able to contribute to society in a much more impactful way. And I stole a phrase from Michael Fishman that I use all the time because it's so important to me. And it's this idea that impact is the currency of success. And if I've reduced myself into a list of symptoms, my impact has been minimized. You know, and I'll quote Bobby Kennedy and say, you know, we're looking at, you know, the man with an illness has one goal versus the healthy man has many.
So true.
That like when I've diminished myself to that diagnosis, you know, all of a sudden my focus is not on everybody else. My focus is on me.
Yeah. So true.
And I think that's become about me.
And I think that's the enemy of the deceiver, right? Like, it's to get us in that state to where we're only looking inward and we're not looking up or out. You know, we're just constantly looking in our own, and it victimizes us. It makes us ineffectual. And, you know, granted, like, you know, God can use you in whatever state you're in, you know, like he's done that with millions and millions of people. And,
why do we need to make him work that hard?
Like, if you don't have to, like, don't do that on purpose. Like, don't put yourself in that position on purpose. But I think there's such, I did a video where I just asked AI, like, how would you destroy a family, or how would you destroy, and people have done this before too, but like, how would you go about destroying a family, a healthy family? And it's like, you do all these things that we're talking about. Like you victimize them, you get them distracted, you get them hooked on dopamine, you get them isolated, you don't eat real food, you don't have any real time with nature, like you're not spending time in community. And that's why I think this is where I get really passionate, or like a just anger, or whatever you want to call it. But when you start seeing the tools that I think the enemy has used, and government and big pharma and all these different industries, and granted, it's not that I think conventional doctors are trying to intentionally do things to people. I think they're within a system that they've been trained in, that they believe is the only and right way to do things. But the people that are at the top, who are funneling this information down, or funneling the proceeds to encourage people to do things poorly, that's where I start to say, like, this is not by accident, like what's happening to people. Like this, like the fact that we're experiencing such high rates of infertility, is that's how the devil wins. Like that's how evil wins, is like not allowing for procreation, not allowing for more of God's children to be born, or the ones that are being born are dying early, or the ones that are in their 30s, 40s, and 50s and 60s are living no life at all and having no impact, right? Like that to me is where I just get super motivated to like keep talking about this, because that's what's at stake. Like life is really at stake, whether you're living or not. Like you're living life abundantly is at stake, and I just won't stand for that. Like and that's why, like, you say what you want, but to me, like, that's my why with all this stuff. It's like when we work with women in our program, in my program, like I work with women primarily because if I can help the mom be healthy, the whole family benefits from it. Like the husband, the father, the children, they all benefit from mom, who's like the pivot point, the linchpin of the success, the health of the family. Now, I'm a huge proponent of biblical model for the household, where the responsibility lies on the shoulders of the father. But I also am very understanding of the practicality and the logistics of how a successful family is run via the mom. And so that's where I love working with women specifically, because like when they succeed, the whole family starts to succeed. And that's why I think women are under such attack, individually versus men versus children.
I want to ask you, because I'm curious what you'll answer to this, and that is one of the things that I've been spending a lot of time on. And we talked about science versus faith or spirituality, and how there's a convergence of those two things. And particularly, and I'll say in a conversation I was having, I'm sure you know who Philip von Holzendorf-Fehling is, right? Leela.
Yeah, I don't know him, but yeah.
Very cool guy. I'd love to introduce you to him. But Philip and I had this whole conversation about quantum energy and frequency and biofields and so on and so forth. And at one point in my journey, I would have laughed most of that stuff off as being super woo. Yeah. And yet the more we have this conversation, I remember having a conversation with him, and he gets into this whole thing about, that which we emit is that which we attract, right? This idea that the energy, the goodness, the whatever we want to say that we put off actually creates very measurable frequency.
Right.
And frequency attracts frequency, much like magnets. And as we attract that frequency, and he's talking, and I went, well, I just want to ask you this question. I'm like, because it very much to me sounds like the golden rule is more of a science lesson than a spiritual truth. That, do unto others as you would have them do unto you means that if I want kindness, I need to project kindness. And if I want chaos, I need to project chaos, right? And all of the things that from a frequency standpoint, I am pushing into the world are exactly the things that I find. No different than the person, and I use this, we always say, I found my keys. Oh, they're always in the last place you look. And it's like, well, they're in the last place you look because you quit looking.
Right.
Like once you found what you were looking for, you stopped looking. Well, people who seek out negativity find negativity. Well, because they quit looking for the positivity, because they found what they were looking for.
Right.
Like you self-fulfilled that prophecy in such a way. But that brings me, I mean, obviously from a woo standpoint, when we talk about energy and frequency and quantum science and all this other kind of stuff, when, not time to unpack all that today, but it brings me to a large point, and I'm moving in a direction here, and that is, ancient wisdom is now being discovered by science. And it's making me laugh, to be honest with you, because so many of the things that I'm seeing in this frequency conversation, I was having with somebody else who actually imprints energy in fabric. If you're familiar with intelligent threads, super cool, but they're able to put frequency into fabric so that actually when you put the shirt on, your muscles relax because it's putting that type of frequency into you. And I'm like, well, this is so woo and so weird, and I love it now. But it was this idea, but I was reading an article recently about how different types of fabric, even when they're woven together, each of them already have a frequency that they emit, and
like wool
those
and linen and all
two
that.
frequencies together collide, and then they create chaos even in your physiology. And I was like, well, that very much sounds like Mosaic law. That doesn't sound weird, right? Had another conversation with someone who's talking about, healthy practices for agriculture. And the idea that, trauma is stored at a cellular level. Well, if you end up killing an animal that you're about to eat and the animal is killed in a traumatic fashion, that cortisol rise, everything that happens in the animal prior to its death is stored in the cells of the meat that we then eat. We're eating trauma-infused meat. And I'm like, well, that sounds very kosher. That sounds very halal. Like that. I mean, all of this, we're finding out in a kind of a funny, ingenious sort of way, that this ancient wisdom, like the idea of killing animals in a humane way prior to eating them, was what they were commanded to do back then. But now I look at it and I'm like, well, yeah, but we've scientifically been able to connect that to cellular trauma that they would have had no words for.
Right. But they
so
were
many
instructed to
things.
do it nonetheless. Yeah.
Absolutely. But they followed it. They knew what they were doing. And to this day, Orthodox Jews will follow that exact same pattern because it's commanded, even though we didn't know why it was commanded, right? Like all of a sudden it's making sense because we're unpacking these things. Do you find yourself, I'm going to say, crashing into those types of things on the regular, that where science and maybe ancient wisdom are crossing paths? And I'm curious what examples you have of when you're like, I'm finding this, and then all of a sudden it's reminiscent of, I know this because of, religious teaching or whatever. And then all of a sudden you find those things overlapping and you're like, to me, I find myself snickering, to be honest with you. I find myself kind of laughing like, oh, look, God got it right. Who imagined that? Yeah.
Big surprise. Yeah, no, I did a post, it's not that huge of a secret at all, but, with, in Ezekiel with the perfect protein with, the grains and the millet and, the lentil bread recipe that was provided that was acting as a complete protein, for, people of that time. It was sustaining them. And, we didn't know what a complete protein was until more recently, but that was, thousands of years ago that was instructed to them. And so it's just one of those, it's another example of that whole thing. And Leviticus is kind of chock full of those similar kind of, ideas. And it was, I think it's always interesting if God was protecting his people and trying to maintain cleanliness, and the instructions that he was providing are now well founded in research, right? Like with pork and certain types of, bottom dwelling sea creatures and all that kind of stuff, where it's like they're filtering out these foods and these bacteria and parasites that maybe you don't want to be consuming them if you don't want to have problems as a tribe, and I think the same is true for today. And I think the argument that I can hear in my head, as for maybe someone who's listening to this or people that I can think of that I talk to, it's just like, okay, yeah, that's cool and great, but like, what about here and now? What about like today? And like, how can, like, I have kids I got to take to soccer practice and I have all these things going on. Like I got to be, I got a lot going on, and the best I can do is running through Chick-fil-A and all this stuff. And I think there's an argument there for sure, but I think the whole point of what we're trying to say is just like, there's an order that God has provided. And I think we've gotten so far away from his order, and his plan. And this is part of the fall back in, the Garden of Eden. But I think the danger that we're facing now, the slippery slope, is that when you do things that are considered to be restrictive, like eating a whole food diet or eating an anti-inflammatory diet, people are like, well, that's gonna like, it's too restrictive and it's gonna cause an eating disorder, and it's just like it's whatever. And I'm like, unfortunately, our goalposts or our line in the sand. Like we're so far away from it that we can't even like get a proper understanding of what practical good health even looks like. And it becomes like this biohacking thing. And the reality is it's just like, this is what people have been doing for centuries, like eating this way, living this way, connecting with the earth, like getting natural sunlight, having exposure to cold, having exposure to heat with heat shock proteins, like eating a whole food diet, not living off of, preserved foods because you didn't have a refrigerator or you didn't have a can. Like you had to eat these things pretty fresh, and you're eating them in the seasons based on, what would grow and what wouldn't grow. And, like all these things like that, and like killing animals humanely and using them well, because if you didn't, it would spoil. And, you had to like maintain a herd and all this different stuff. So like these are things that have been around for so long, up until now, up until the last 50, 60 years. And now we're like, whoa, like that's like, what's wrong with this, number one? And whoa, like that's too restrictive and like that's too extreme. And I'm like, what we're doing now is so extreme. Like what we're doing now is like, we've never done this before. And like, we're so surprised by all our circadian rhythm disruptions and heart attacks and cardiovascular disease and infertility. And it's like, man, we've gotten so far away from the biblical structure, the biblical model that God laid out thousands of years ago. And I don't know. I just think I always try to make it so as simple and easy for my clients as possible, just to show them that kind of perspective. Because I think once you start seeing it from that perspective of picturing yourself living 150 years ago, like what would you have to do? It kind of makes it feel more practical in a way. And also like we have a lot of resources around us that we can draw from. It may take more effort, sure. Like it's not going to be found at Walmart maybe, or may have to go a little bit greater lengths to get quality food, but it's still out there. And it does cost more money sometimes to buy that kind of stuff, but it's also a very expensive thing to go out and buy convenience foods all the time and go out to restaurants all the time. And I don't know. I just think like we've gotten so busy, and as a result, we've relied so much on convenience foods. And that's like the biggest issue I see all the time. It's just like, we got to get away from that kind of stuff.
I was reading something recently, and it actually was in a conversation that I was having with Ben Azadi again. And and it was kind of funny because the whole conversation wrapped around this idea of fasting. And, at 48 hours into a fast, people report just heightened levels of mental acuity. And now, of course, we understand that is because the digestive system is able to actually relax, and all that energy is able to be, harnessed by other systems in the body, including, detox and so on and so forth. And I was like, well, it's really interesting that you say that, because biblically we're told to fast and pray, especially when we're seeking answers. And I'm like, well, sure. And I believe that. And I believe that there is a spiritual element to it. I'm like, but maybe part of that is well, if you fast, your brain's going to function better and you'll be able to figure out the answers you need.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good perspective.
Like there's just some real science in there that we're neglecting the real science in the message. And it's like, it's not necessarily about a spiritual thing, although it's that as well, but there's clearly an application there otherwise. I want to touch on one other topic when we've got some time here, Austin, and that is, I'll do a shameless plug here and say that I've got a book that I've been working on. I'm submitting the book proposal over to Hay House, had meetings with them, and it's something that I absolutely love, and I believe that it's going to, would resonate with you as well. Is the book is titled Co-Creators, and the entire message behind co-creators is that, in the beginning was the Word, and the entire universe was spoken into existence. And that the words that are spoken, in the beginning of God himself was the creation. And we have the power to speak words, and the power of the tongue defines our reality.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily even the belief system, that I believe that there's literal power in the words that we're speaking. And I believe this links very closely to people who label themselves with diagnoses.
Yeah.
The I am diabetic mindset, as opposed to, I have high glucose levels or whatever. Like how do we make that determination where, we're going to change that narrative? But I genuinely believe that, and again, I hate to use the word manifesting because I think that's got loaded meaning for too many people, but we really do manifest our own realities with the things that we say. I mean, I found myself recently, colloquialism at this point, people are like, oh my gosh, I'm dead, or I'm dying to see you. And these types of phrases have worked their ways into common language. Like, I find myself not even wanting to use that type of language because I'm like, I'm not
Yeah.
telling my cells I'm dead.
Yeah.
Like where our words are spoken with frequencies, and these frequencies are actually telling our cells how to behave. You know, if I'm telling my cells that I am diabetic, they start beginning and, you know, they move in that way. If I don't tell my cells that my cells rather that, you know, we're dying, you know, that actually causes the literal frequency that those words emit from my own mouth cause my cells to inflame. And you
Yeah.
can watch it. Like for instance, I'm sure you're even familiar with the work of Dr. Emoto with speaking negativity or speaking positively into water and then freezing the water and seeing the patterns that are in the water. You're familiar with his work, I'm
Yeah.
sure.
Mm-hmm.
Or the idea you like what's her name? Ellen Langer and the work that Ellen Langer did about taking the old men and put them in a hotel type environment, but the entire hotel was actually it was retrofit like it would have looked when they were in their 20s. The
Interesting.
newspapers were all dated in the years that they were kids. The TV programs were there. There were 0 mirrors allowed to be in the entire place so that they couldn't see themselves old. And within literally 7 days of them being in that, you know, environment, their blood markers had changed.
Wow.
And
That's
it was
crazy.
literally just because they were just brought back to when they were in their 20s.
Wow.
So
I
they
love that.
interacted differently. I mean, guys that were on walkers and, you know, were walkers on their way in, were up walking around. They did
Wow.
nothing medical.
That's awesome.
It's just the psychological study
Power
of
of
the
the mind.
power of their belief systems.
Yeah.
And I believe wholeheartedly that we create these environments for ourselves with our health, with our wealth, with our relationships. Keep speaking doom over something and it's going to be terrible. Keep speaking, you know, curse over your children and your family. I guarantee you it's going to be a train wreck. Like you're
Yeah.
creating that reality. And I mean, one, I'd love your input on something along those lines because I'd just love to hear your thoughts on that. But I want you to kind of weave that into what you see in your practice. Because people who speak life to themselves live.
Yeah.
And
So-
people like no different than but you hear like doctors give the, you know, prognosis of life, right? And why are they so accurate?
Right.
Like you've got
They're
3
setting them
months
up
to
for
live,
failure.
and then you see people die exactly 90 days later, and you're like, that's weird. And
Yeah.
no, because they've been telling themselves that I'm on a clock,
Right.
and the body behaves, the body follows.
Yeah. Yeah. What comes to mind is Proverbs 18. You know, it's the tongue has the power of life and death,
Yep.
and those who love it will eat its fruit. Right. And so it's I think that's again biblical, right? Like this is not. I always tell people, you know, people try to try to use science to find God, or like see if he's real or if he exists. And I always say like we use science to try to explain how God operates. Like that's how I view science, because like I believe that God is a constant, right? And so he's sovereign, omnipresent, omnipowerful, and all that, omnipotent. And you know, so we're tapping into things that are already in existence. And again, the power of the mind, the power of the tongue is just what's holding us back so often from reaching that. And so part of what I do with my clients is, you know, I always tell them like, look, you're a healthy person. You're just getting healthier. Okay. Like I always try to get them to believe that, because it's true. Like they're still breathing. They're still walking around. Yeah. Like they're here. So you are, first of all, like I always tell them this, I tell them this too, like you're not broken. Okay. Like you may have things that are not operating as well as they need to, or as well as they could, but you're not broken. Like God didn't make a mistake with you. Like there are genetic components that always come into play, but more times than not, that's the minority of people's issues. Like the majority is lifestyle, like the things you do or don't do, the deficiencies you have. And, you know, so I'll tell them like, look, like you blame things on your age, because everyone's always saying like, well, I'm just getting older, like this much. And that kind of gets back to your hotel example. Like they changed their thought about their age. Like they thought they were in their 20s. And so they start functioning like they're younger. But if you think like, well, I'm just getting older, I guess this is what's supposed to happen, you're going to be expecting bad things to happen to your body. But if you understand, like what I tell them is, look, you've been in a state of deficiency for a longer period of time than you were when you're in your 20s. And so now that you're 30 or 40 or 50 or 60 or 70, like you've been having the ongoing repercussions of those deficiencies or those systems that aren't operating at their full capacity. But hey, here's the good news. If we start to restore those things and get you back in sync and get those deficiencies met, those detox pathways functioning, good circadian rhythm implemented, like you will start to see changes. It's, and I always tell people this too. This isn't to be offensive, but you're not that special, which is really good news. Like you are a human body that God has created to function a certain way, and it has certain foundational requirements that need to be met. If you're not meeting those, it's like that's part of the problem. Once you start meeting those, you start seeing that you're not that special, and these things start to resolve. And that's really good news. Like I was just talking to somebody today. She had this terrible experience 10 years ago and didn't do things right. She detoxed improperly, didn't use the right binders and all this stuff, and created a bunch of symptoms, Herx responses. And now she has this idea that she's just like this special case that can't be fixed and nobody can help her. And I was just like, look, like that was the problem that this is the error that was made. Like you didn't do this correctly, unfortunately. And nobody was there to walk you through it. But once you realize that you're not that special and your body was created very fearfully and wonderfully made, which is special, then you can start to appreciate the fact that you have the ability to heal and you don't have to feel this way for your whole life. And, healing is not the same thing, at least in my opinion, as being healthy. Like people have this idea of doing in general healthy things compared to society, which our societal standard for health is very low. So like they're saying like, well, I eat pretty healthy compared to people around me. I don't drink very often, blah, blah, blah. And I'm always like, that's great. Like you're a healthy person. Like that's great. But like, if you want to heal from something and you want to continue to be healthy and get beyond where you currently are, like it does require some specific action and some specific steps to take. And when people kind of start believing that, they start viewing themselves as like, oh yeah, like I'm healthy. Like I'm trying to get healthier. I think there's a shift in their mindset that takes place. And again, I think, I've always wondered, like, because my program is not that fancy. Like, we've had really high success with it, but it's not like we're doing crazy things. Like it's all like I do it all from a computer, right? Like I'm telling them like I'm not injecting them with anything. I'm not giving them any special procedures or medicines or anything. Like, we have detox protocols we have them do and meal plans they follow and all that stuff. But it's just all things that have already been built into their cells that we're tapping into, and we're trying to harness that natural ability that God gave them. And
innate intelligence.
Yeah, it's like, it's innate. And I think once they start to see it, they're like, oh, that wasn't very hard. Like that was actually pretty simple. I've been dealing with this for 20 years and now it's gone in 4 weeks. Like, you got to be kidding me. And I'm like, yeah, I know. Like that's unfortunate, but now go tell people about it. Like now that your cup is overflowing, go share that with people that need to hear it, because they're also suffering and you can prevent their suffering. And it's like our, our salvation testimony, like at least not even close to the same level of significance, but when you have a true conviction about something, you want to tell people about it. Like you want to prevent them from going through it, and you want to help them to be saved. And I don't know, like that's what the health stuff is about for me. It's tapping into what God has already built into us and giving thanks for all things, good or bad, but not letting our tongues dictate, our experience when God is not, he's a good father. Like he's not wanting us to suffer for no reason. Like he will use suffering for his glory and for our benefit, but more times than not, it's self-inflicted. And I think that's what's hard to watch, especially as a Christian sitting in a Christian church, watching Christians who are doing this and asking for a miracle. And I'm like, look, God, every time you're taking a breath, it's a miracle. Like every time your skin cuts and heals, it's a miracle. Every time your cells are being replaced every 3 to 5 days, like that's a miracle. Like you're just making it hard for that miracle to be realized, but like the miracle is already there.
I've got in this. You remind me of something that is I every time I go to like think that I'm going to make a point, you say it right before I get to it.
Sorry.
That is this whole idea of like I'm going in there and praying for the miracle, and it's like we all know the metaphor of the guy standing on the roof and oh God, send somebody to heal me, and a boat goes by and he's like, all right, take care, have a nice day, like, and like all of these options are coming and he's still sitting there praying for the miracle, right? And God's like, look, I sent you a dozen different ways that this could happen, and you're just not paying attention.
Right.
And I really do see that. And when you started the conversation, you brought up the topic of wisdom, and that we need to be praying for wisdom. That's really what is most important. And I laugh because people who've known me a while, I don't like when people pray for me. And I know that's going to sound really weird theologically, but someone's just like, I'll pray for you. What should I be praying for? I'll be praying for you. And it's like, I get like kind of weird about it. Cause I'm like, I don't know what you're praying for me.
Right.
Like I don't want somebody praying for me. First of all, if I don't know what it is you're praying for, because I don't want you praying for something that I'm praying against. Like I'm not cool with that because I don't know how to put God in a trick box. Yeah. But whose prayer does he answer, yours or mine? Yeah. Not that I think God's up there like running American Idol or something, but at the same time,
no, I know
like,
what
I
you
want
mean,
as many
though.
votes in my favor.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like I look at it in this direction of, I always tell people, like, if you're going to pray for me, then pray for wisdom. Pray that God sends me wisdom. That's what I want, because I believe that the solutions already exist.
Right.
I don't believe that I need to be praying for miracles in most cases. I need to be praying for the wisdom to understand how to use the tools that are already in front of me.
Man, that's so good. I love that.
The answers exist, and praying for a miracle in many cases, in my opinion, it kind of shortcuts. Like, God gave you everything. Like, acknowledge the gifts that he's already given before you ask for another one. And if you've given me the gift of understanding my health, then if I'm not implementing the things that I already understand, how dare I ask you for something else?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the, I have kids, like that's what I think about with my children. It's like, they'll ask me for something. I'm like, no, I want you to be better for this. I don't want to just give you something. Like I could buy my kids most things, but it's like, I want them to learn so much more than just having that short-term experience from that thing. And I think that's, again, if we're eternal creatures, which I believe we are, like that, we're in this temporary body that we're being housed in, our spirit's being housed in, but our spirit is going to live on forever, right? And so I don't think that our spirit gets wiped out and erased and we just start with this like, new memories and have, I think like all this is being built upon for a reason, right? And so this is going to carry over into eternal existence. And I just think, like, again, God and his sovereign power and knowledge and wisdom, I'm going to default to that, God, because I don't fully understand all this, but I do know that this is not for nothing. Like this matters here now, and learning these lessons and growing in our faith and being sanctified, like that's really what it is. It's like sanctification, right? Like we're not yet sanctified, but we are being sanctified. And with that in mind, it just kind of gives me some peace and just freedom, just like, okay, God, like whatever come what may, like I'm gonna keep using these gifts you've given me. I'm gonna keep relying on my foundational understanding of who you are, and ask for wisdom and pray for you to show me things that bring you more glory and increase my faith. Like I think that's always a good thing, and having that daily bread experience to where we're constantly being reminded of who God is good. And like I think God uses many different things and methods and people to remind us of how powerful and how cool he is. But beyond that, like, we've been given everything we need. Like we don't need anything else. And I love that. I don't know if I've heard that, but not like you explained it really well. So thanks for sharing that. That was good.
Oh, good. I'm glad I was able to benefit your life too.
Yeah, no, I mean, you've been very beneficial this whole time, not just that one thing, but I like that in particular, because I have a hard time articulating that sometimes. And I think that is a good way to articulate that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And it genuinely is. Like it's an ongoing thing with me for years. Like, no, give me wisdom. Like give me wisdom to understand how to do what it is that I already have been given the tools to do. Because I genuinely do. Like I told you before, like the idea of asking for more when I've already been given something. I think it's like I want to acknowledge and be grateful for the things I've been given, and to not multiply what I've been given, to not take the knowledge I've been given and the health I've been given and the connections, the relationships, the finances, like all of the things that I've been given, and not multiply them is disrespectful. I think that's ungrateful.
Right.
To not want to expand that stuff and then use all of those resources, albeit knowledge or wealth or anything else, for kingdom purpose, obviously.
Yeah.
And I think we can do that, and impact is the currency of success, right?
Yeah, it's such a great reminder. And I think, again, having a kingdom mindset, where I think a lot of Christians have this, like, kind of like the rooftop example of somebody coming to rescue us off a rooftop, whereas, I don't know, like as a child of God, who's been given dominion over this world, I don't know, like it'd be kind of cool to expand God's kingdom and conquer and not just sit back and be passive with my life. Like I think our mission is to extend the gospel to all four corners of the earth. And I don't know, like so many of us, I think we just miss that like aggressiveness with the gospel. Like we settle for things that are just the bare minimum. And God's like, I have so much more for you. And like, and it's for his glory and the whole thing, but it's also for our enjoyment and our pleasure and our learning and our growth while we're kind of extending God's kingdom.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's really good stuff. I mean, the life of a Christian is awesome. I think it's so cool. And I think it's been so, what's the word I'm looking for? Just like, neutered. Like it's been neutered to the point to where like we're making docile men and we're creating like these women who are taking on more than they should handle and creating children that don't know what a biblical model even looks like or who God even is because they've never had it modeled for them. And gosh, it's just like so much of the stuff that just doesn't need to happen. And in the United States of America, could be a beacon on the hill. And I think we still are in a lot of ways, thanks to God. And I think we could go so much further with this. And I think with the whole Maha thing, and I've been a part of that. I've been like the Maha ball and all, with these Maha people. And I don't even consider myself to be a Maha person necessarily, but for me, what I always ran into with the Maha thing was just like I want to make Christianity great again. I want to make God's people healthy, and I want to make God's rule and reign more pronounced than it ever has been. And it's not just about America for me. It's about God's people and extending that mission and the gospel to as many people as we can. Like that's really what my whole mission is.
Well, I appreciate what you're doing. Million followers on Instagram are now hearing on a regular basis that message from you, not just about health, but about faith. And I think the marriage between those two things is absolutely fantastic. Austin, if I give you last words here and tell you, like, what do you think is the most game-changing advice you would give to anybody listening? Like, what would be and I know it's really hard to say the one thing, right? But what would you leave us with in terms of what matters most in this?
Yeah, I mean, I think, obviously, again, this is the obvious answer, and probably people won't be surprised by this, but I mean, you can have the best health, all the money in the world. This is something that really got me. My kids would always ask me, like, Dad, would you give up, the house for this big house, or would you give up the dog for whatever? Like they always kind of give these like extreme examples of like, what would you give up to exchange for this? And it just got me thinking, and I was like, because I think one of my kids asked me like, what would you give up for me? And I was like, dude, nothing. Like there is nothing I would give up for you. And it just got me thinking like how many of us will sacrifice our faith or our kids or our wife for like a little bit more money at work. Like not even all the money in the world, but like $10,000 extra a year for your job, and you have to work more time to get it. Or like, like we make these like micro sacrifices that we're like giving up our family, we're giving up our faith for like these little sacrifices here and there. And I think if you can start with your foundation that is deeply rooted in the truth of the gospel, that Jesus died for you, that like he loves you, that he wants to have a relationship with you, and he's real, and he is who he says he is. Who's the God of the universe. Like that to me is so profound, because everything from that comes life, right? Like your health, your finances, all those things that you're talking about and you can attest to that you've lived by the grace of God. Like that's what all stems from that. And the cool thing about that is that it's not even a prosperity gospel. It's not like do this and get this. It's more of just like there's blessing to be experienced for those who are in Christ. And if you're not in Christ, all the other stuff that you could get that are blessings are not even close to a real blessing. So that would be my thing to leave people with, is just start with your relationship with God, get to know him deeply, and watch your life change, and ask the Holy Spirit for wisdom, because he will give it abundantly. That would be
I love that. And it is. It's a priorities thing, and I always go back to what are your core values. Like Find the values, because then if you're ever out of alignment with your own values, you will feel the symptom of that.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And I think that's important. Austin, I can't thank you enough for joining us today. It's been a pleasure having you on to talk to you, meet you, get to spend some time with you, and get to know your heart. I love that. Anybody who's looking forward to getting a hold of Austin or learning more about what he does at his practice, as well as what he's personally up to, because that's all social media fodder now, right?
Yeah.
I would say you look down in the show notes and you'll find all the contact information. You can follow him on Instagram at dr.austin.lake. But I thank you for what you're doing out there. And I mean that in a very genuine, authentic way. I think the voice that you've created for yourself is one that people need to hear. And I thank you for the authenticity, because it is unapologetically you. And I think that shows through. And again, I think that's your tremendous success is based on that authenticity. So thank you.
Yeah, of course, Mark. I appreciate you having me and for reaching out. And I'm looking forward to having more of these kind of conversations. This is great.
I look forward to it, buddy. I'll talk to you soon.
All right.
Thanks for joining us today on Performance Driven Living with Dr. Austin Lake. And we'll see you next time.